Hey everyone, Stegar here and welcome back to Fairview. In today's episode we're going to be working on the city's final suburb and building a small camping ground next to that. So to start off with this build, I started by placing down a small walking path from this main road here, and it just connects up this suburb that's here to where we'll be building the camping ground, which I've just started on now by placing down this dirt road. And I was just using this, I think it's like the toilet block from one of the park life areas or something like that, and was just using that as like the center kind of toilet facilities at this camping ground, and just kind of extending out the gravel with the ultimate area fillers to create like a area that's actually like sort of paved in a way that people can park on, and then placing down a whole bunch of camper vans as well as some tents and a few cars around the place, just to kind of make it seem like it's actually a camping ground and add a bit more detail to that. And I think I ended up just using procedural objects for these so that because they're like buildings or something as part of one of the park life things, I think I just converted them to procedural objects, and that way they don't require road access and like don't complain about stuff. And then just putting some trees along the side of this fence here to kind of block it all off from everything else that's going on. I mean, there's construction over the other side, as well as just kind of keeps it a bit more secluded when people are like camping for the night, and it's like not exactly like people from the road would be able to see you. And then just forking off this path here so that there's a bit more access, and putting down these like little I think they're buildings from the European Suburbia pack, but I'm just using them as like little cabins that people could stay in if they, you know, don't have a camper van or anything, but they kind of want to like camp out here or something. And just putting some gravel in between there so that it seems like people can walk between, as well as these small bushes and things, just to try and add a little bit more detail here, because otherwise it'd be kind of lacking. And just placing down this random vanilla pool, it doesn't look that great, but I mean it serves its purpose, and I wasn't really prepared to do anything more than that really. And just placing down a small building there, as well as there's that house on kind of to the bottom right now as the screen keeps turning around, but that I imagine would be like the owner's house, and maybe they just like live there and are able to see what's going on the campsite. And just placing down a whole lot of trees here to kind of fill up the space and create a buffer from where this new suburb's going to be to like the campground, and just keep a buffer in there. I also did some work off camera, just filling in a few blank areas under the power lines with some weeds and trees and things, and didn't include that, and also cut through a lot of this tree placement here, as it's not all that interesting. I mean, you get a good idea of what I was doing there, just placing down a variety of trees and trying to make it look bushy, while also making sure they had like a few meters clearance of the actual power lines so that it wasn't really a fire risk or anything. And then just snaking this road down the hill, and then starting to place down the houses to form what will be like the kind of like first suburb area of this episode, because there's like two distinct areas that are very quite different. One's sort of like an older area that might have been built over time in like say the 70s or something, and the second area that we'll be working on later in the episode is kind of like a new development that's under construction and has a lot of repetitive buildings and things. But anyway, here is just placing down all these houses and kind of like making sure that they all kind of worked with the terrain differences and things. I mean, you can never get this perfect, but I mean, you can get it good enough that it's kind of like you can get away with the minor things and stuff. And also creating like a gravel driveway that leads down to this one house at the end here, and just kind of working out how to terminate it so it doesn't look like super weird, and then just going around with all these fences and fencing off the various different places to try and add a bit more detail and give people a bit more privacy. And then I think I cut through a lot of this about now, and then start putting down some hedges. I think this is the first time I've ever used hedges in the city, and obviously the last episode, since this is going to be the last time lapse. I think I mentioned that at the start, but if I didn't, well, there you go. This is like kind of the last build episode of the series. I'm gonna include a one more public transit video, as well as like a big live play thing where I just take you on a tour of the city for however long that takes, and then it wouldn't be complete without some final cinematic vid. But anyway, here I'm just placing down some construction sites along here, as I feel like being on the edge of the city's like constantly expanding into new lands, and this is like one little area that hasn't been filled up yet and is currently getting filled up, and then just placing in a whole bunch of these houses. I think those three are all from the University City content creator pack that King Leno made, and you have to pay for that on Steam if you don't have it already. And then just, you know, placing down some more houses as you do, and kind of like along that main road. I didn't want too much there, so I just placed down a few houses, and then the ones that are close enough to connect to this other road, they connect to that other road, so there's not like too much traffic trying to get out onto that main highway, as I imagine that is kind of one of like the key links between all the different areas of the surrounding towns, as it kind of bypasses the main part of the city, even though there's probably not that much traffic in the main part of Fairview, as it's quite like sort of more of a small town than a city or anything like that. And just placing down some trees here to kind of like fill out the rest of the area, and just kind of, this is my final attempt at detailing, it's just basically placing down a whole heap of trees and trying to make sure there's like 2 in everyone's backyards or something, and then just going around with a whole bunch of fallen leaves, as I like to do here, and just placing them down under all the trees. And also, since I'm using the prop fences, I can place them down without having to worry about the textures showing up as they do on network fences and things, which can be quite annoying. So now we're into the final part of this episode, and also the final build of the series, and here we're just building a new residential development up on this hill. I mean, it's kind of not that clear as to how steep this is, but you can kind of see the topographic lines on the screen that give you an indication that it is actually quite hilly here, as well as obviously there's been some cliffs formed around various roads and buildings that I've started placing down here. And I just placed down that Aldi as like a big supermarket, I guess, for the area, so people can come and do their shopping, as well as a few other buildings to just kind of fill out this area and create more things that people can do here, rather than just live in their homes and drive halfway across the city to go to commercial places or something. And here I was just putting some more shops up the top, and then placing these small houses along the side of this hill. I didn't want to use anything too big here, since kind of the slope of that road meant that it'd probably be a bit complex to try and make sure that everything works with the different slopes. And here, just placing down a whole lot of these houses, I just kept using the same houses here on purpose, as a lot of these new developments that you see, they literally are just like the same 2 or 3 house designs repeated, and that was the kind of the idea that I was going for here. And then placing down these like 3 or 4 story apartment buildings along the side of this sloped road here that leads into the rest of the area, and it was just kind of like a bit of a mix of density, so you haven't just got all like single family homes and stuff, but also got some apartments that people can choose to live in. And here I was just placing down all these dirt decals along like a road that I created, and then deleting that road and using the terraforming networks to kind of make it look like the route of this road has been excavated out, but it hasn't actually been paved yet, and I just kind of wanted to do that since it kind of looks like everything is under construction and kind of adds to that vibe. And I think that was also inspired from some general looking at Google Earth from like 6 months ago or something that I remembered, and then just coming along this other road that forks off from here and placing down some more houses, those smaller ones, as well as some full like 4x4 houses that take up quite a bit of space, and then just connecting up various parts of this area with some gravel paths. I think they're just the vanilla ones, but I mean they serve the purpose, and they also don't have street lights or anything on them, which I prefer in this instance, since I feel like that's sort of the path that you'd only really use at day. I mean, at night time people are probably just driving everywhere, since there's not a heck of a lot of public transport options, and they probably only run where there's a lot of demand, since it's not very feasible to run buses all day and things. And here I was placing down this planter, and then I decided to do something which I kind of wish I didn't, because this got very laggy very quickly, but placing down a scaled down tree in the planter and then just copying it along here. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell here, but between placing these, it was taking a good like second or so for the trees to actually place down, which really kind of lowered my patience to a level where I almost wanted to give up on this build, but I chose to stick through it. And here just placing down some scaled down trees. I imagine these have been planted quite recently, so hence why they are quite small, and then just kind of like copying them and moving them around. And for some reason the concrete up on the top of that bit disappeared, but I managed to fix that up by simply moving one of them, and it all came back to being. And here's placing down some planters in front of that shop to kind of fill in the space, as it was a bit too much concrete, and copying all these trees across here. And this was kind of like my final little bit that nearly kind of destroyed all my willingness to even work in the city, since this was getting really quite laggy by the end of it. As you can imagine, copying procedural objects with hundreds of tries is probably not the best option. But we've almost reached the end of the episode already, so if you've enjoyed this one, make sure to leave a like and leave a comment about how terrible you think it is that I'm ending this series. Subscribe, because I'm going to be releasing a public transit video as well as some final cinematics from the series. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode, which will probably be a live play from the city.